Let's return to Greece's current money troubles now. And recent revelations, it's been masking its vast depth. Just after adopting the euro in 2001, Athens secretly borrowed billions from Goldman Sachs, but without declaring it as a loan. Let's now talk with economist and author William Engdahl, who is in Frankfurt. Mr. Engdahl, thanks for being with us today. Greece is now pointing the finger of blame at Wall Street. Is this justified?
Well, I think there are two things at work here with the Greek situation. One is Goldman Sachs is notorious. They've played a role in the accession of Italy back in 1999 into the Eurozone through various derivative swap manipulations. Of course, there's a loophole, or there was a loophole until recently, in the EU regulations that allowed these kind of derivative arrangements to go off the books, off balance sheet, so to speak, so that governments like Greece could hide their real fiscal state. And the problem is Goldman Sachs functions worldwide as a quasi-governmental power. It's so almost omnipotent in the world of finance that they are able to literally affect the affairs of state in the Euroland.
Sir, but what does Wall Street gain out of all of this?
Well, Goldman Sachs in particular, who made these derivative contracts, has presumably gained a huge amount of profit from this. But I think there's another agenda. If you look at the pattern of Wall Street firms since the creation of the American century after Bretton Woods in 1944, Wall Street is really the power center of the American power projection on the world scale. And the way that Wall Street functions is as much politically and geopolitically as it is for pure financial profit, although that plays a role, of course. And I think it's no coincidence. I can't prove this on paper in a court of law, but I think it's no coincidence at the time when the dollar should be tumbling in the weakness of the American economy and the weakness of the banking system. Quite the opposite is happening, and the euro currency is facing very severe speculative pressures from hedge funds and from Wall Street banks and others. So I think there's a very big political element to this whole thing, and I think Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan Chase are very much involved in that as political players.
Mr. Engdahl, are such account tricks regular practice? Are many other countries hiding their debts?
Well, that's what is unknown in Brussels at the moment. How many other countries, Portugal, Italy, which has a horrendous public debt to GDP ratio, something like 130%. Only Japan in the world today is in worse shape in terms of its public debt. And the finance ministers of the EU, at the end of last week, made a decision to have a very exhaustive survey of exactly what the state of these off-balance sheet manipulations are in the various countries. So we'll have to see how serious they are about that. The problem is the banking lobby in Europe is almost as strong as it is in Wall Street and in Washington. Perhaps not quite as strong, but it's enormously powerful because banks like Deutsche Bank in Germany or SocGen in Paris are enormously involved, or UBS in Zurich, are involved as players with the Wall Street top 10 banks that are doing all these derivative games. So they see their future tied with Wall Street, even more than their own national identities as national banks.
Well, the world recovering from the crisis now is already struggling, but do such methods threaten even more financial trouble?
Well, I frankly don't see a recovery, certainly not in the United States. I am about to bring out a new book called Gods of Money, Wall Street and the Death of the American Century. And in there I demonstrate that the subprime real estate crisis that erupted on the global stage back in 2007 really was the beginning of a final breakdown crisis of the Bretton Woods system, of the dollar system. And the question is, what will arise to replace it? China is not in a position to offer a reserve currency alternative. They're working on certain regional currency arrangements. Russia is talking with some of the oil-producing Gulf countries, according to the best information that I have, as well as with China on certain kinds of currency stabilizations independent of the dollar. These are all to the good, but I think the real point is the role of Wall Street as the financial fulcrum of the world economy is in a death agony, and that's no exaggeration. And they are doing political tricks. They're doing manipulations like what Goldman Sachs has been doing in Greece. They're doing manipulations in the U.S. financial markets to prop up the stock market and make it appear that there's a recovery. But the Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, and all these other banks, J.P. Morgan Chase, are living on life support from the federal government and the U.S. taxpayer and the creation of money by the Federal Reserve. It's a very unhealthy situation.
Thank you, William Engdahl, author and economist.